Hello everyone. On this video we will be looking at order of operations. Okay. Now before we get started on that, let's take a quick review of our exponents. Okay. So for your exponents you have two parts. You have your base, which is the value being multiplied, and you have your actual exponent, which is the number of times that the base will be multiplied to itself. Okay. So let's look at this exponent problem. Okay, so this would read as, we have two different ways you can read it. 3 to the second power, or 3 squared. Okay, so if we're going to solve this one, 3 squared is just saying that we're going to multiply 3 to itself 2 times. So that's 3 times 3, which is 9. Okay, so let's say we move up to another one just to keep a little bit of practice in. Say 5 to the 4th power. To solve that one, you have 5 to the 4th power, which is 5 times 5 times 5 times 5. 5 times 5 is 25. 25 times 5 is 125. 125 times 5 is 625. Okay, so what about these next problems? Okay, so you have 8 to the 4th power, 2 to the 5th power, negative 2 to the 5th power with no parentheses, and negative 2 to the 5th power with parentheses. Okay, so those two are different. So what I want you to do is go ahead and press pause and try to solve those four on your own. Alright, so I'm assuming you've paused it and worked those out. So let's go ahead and verify your answer, or answers. Okay, so you have 8 to the 4th power. Your base of 8 is going to be multiplied to itself 4 times, which is 8 times 8 times 8 times 8. Okay, so if you multiply these two, you get 64 times 64, which is 4,096. Okay, so for problem B, you have 2 to the 5th power. Your base of 2 is going to be multiplied to itself 5 times. So that's 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, 8 times 2 is 16, 16 times 2 is 32. Okay, now for C, whenever you have a negative number and an exponent, if there's no parentheses, this is just the same as saying negative 1 times 2 to the 5th power. That's just when you don't have the parentheses. So when you don't have the parentheses, we know that 2 to the 5th power is 32, so this ends up being the same as saying negative 1 times 32, which is negative 32. Okay, now with this one, instead of negative 2 to the 5th, we're going to change that to negative 2 to the 4th power, only because I want to kind of show you something. Okay, so for problem D, if you have negative 2 in parentheses to the 4th power, then that's going to equal negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. Because this exponent up here on C only applies to the 2. It doesn't apply to the negative. It doesn't apply to the negative. But the exponent 4 here, because it's around the whole parentheses, everything in that parentheses applied to that exponent. So that's why the -2 applies to that, but the 2 only applies to the 5. Okay, so you have -2 times -2, which is +4. +4 times -2 is -8. -8 times -2 is +16. All right. So if you are still writing this, feel free to pause it and finish up. But we're going to go ahead and move on to our next page. There we go. Okay, so for this page, we're looking at our acronym for our order of operations, or PEMDAS, PEMDAS. Now, your P is your parentheses or any grouping symbol. Well, symbols. Okay, so you have parentheses, or you could have brackets, which looks like this, or you can have braces, which kind of look like little crooked parentheses, or absolute values, which are just horizontal lines. And I'm sure there are a few others out there you might see, but those are the main ones, and those are the ones that we're going to focus on. Again, like I said, you might see different ones out there, but these 4 are the main ones. Okay, your E means your exponent. We just did a quick example of those. Your M is your multiplication. Your D is your division. Your A is your addition, and your S is your subtraction. Okay. Now, to help you remember that, you can use the very popular acronym, Please Excuse My Dear Aunt Sally, PEMDAS, to kind of remind you which ones come after the other. Now, there's one very, very, very common error that a lot of people do, and they end up getting the wrong answer. And I want to kind of point that out to you now, so you know to have a certain process to make sure you don't get the wrong answer. You want to get the right answer. Okay, and that process is, of course, you're going to start with your parentheses or grouping symbols. Then you're going to go to your exponents. But you're not going to do the multiplication and division together. I mean, separate. You're going to do them together. So you have your multiplication or division, whichever one comes first when you're going from left to right. And you're going to see me write that left to right over and over and over again. And I suggest you write it over and over and over again because it's very important. And then you have your addition and subtraction. And once again, I do those from left to right. All right. So if you are still writing this, of course, feel free to pause it and finish up. But we're going to go ahead and move on to our examples. We have quite a few examples. I want to make sure you get this. All right, so we want to evaluate. You may see where it says evaluate. You may see where it says solve. You may not see anything at all but the question. But evaluate, solve, simplify, same thing. 12 divided by 3 times 2. Okay, so to solve that, let's say I'm just going to rewrite it. 3 times 2. Okay, so first thing we're going to look at are parentheses. We don't have any parentheses, so we can skip that. We're going to look at our exponents. We don't have any exponents, so we can skip that. Then we're going to do our multiplication or division, again from left to right. Okay, so if we write our 12 divided by 3 times 2, going from left to right, we run into a division problem first. So we do that. 12 divided by 3. 12 divided by 3 is equal to 4. So that leaves us with 4 times 2. So we have 4 times 2, which is 8. And we don't have any addition or subtraction, adding or subtracting here, so we can skip that. So our final answer here will be 8. All right, so if you are still writing, feel free to pause it and finish up. But we're going to go ahead and move on to our next example. Okay, so what if we wanted to simplify 60 minus 20 divided by 10 plus 5? Okay, and once again, we're going to start off with our PEMDAS, PEMDAS. So we have our parentheses. We don't have any, well, actually, let me rewrite it so I don't mark up the original problem. 60 minus 20 divided by 10 plus 5. Okay, so we have our parentheses. No parentheses here, so we go ahead and cross that out. Do we have any exponents? No exponents here, so go ahead and cross that out. Then we have our multiplication and division from left to right. So if you have 60 minus 20 divided by 10 plus 5, going from left to right, this is the only, well, the first and only multiplication or division that we run into. So 20 divided by 10 is 2. So this gives us 60 minus 20 divided by 10, which is 2 plus 5. So maybe make a little note. 20 divided by 10 equals 2. All right, or you can write it as 20 divided by 10 equals 2. Either way, whichever one is more comfortable for you. So you have 60 minus 2 plus 5. Okay, so we don't have any more division or multiplication if we go in there, so that's the only one. Now we do addition or subtraction, again from left to right. Uh-oh, sorry about that. Okay, so we have 60 minus 2, which is 58, plus 5. Okay, so 58 plus 5 is equal to 63. Okay, so as you see, that left to right is pretty important. That's why I'm writing it down with each step. Again, it will definitely help you remember it if you write it down with each step also. So I truly suggest doing that. All right, so if you're still writing, feel free to pause it and finish up. But we're going to go ahead and move on to our next example. Okay, so what if we wanted to evaluate 2 to the third power times 5 minus 4 divided by 2? Okay. Now, using PEMDAS, I want you to go ahead and press pause and try this one on your own before I solve it. All right, so I'm assuming you've pressed pause and worked this one out and got everything together. So let's go ahead and verify your answer. Okay, I'm just going to rewrite it. 2 to the third times 5 minus 4 divided by 2. Okay, so do we have any parentheses? Nope, no parentheses, so we can go ahead and skip that. Do we have any exponents? Yes, we do. We have exponent right here. So we know that 2 to the third power is 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. So this becomes, instead of 2 to the third times 5, it becomes 8 times 5 minus 4 divided by 2. Okay. We don't have any more exponents, so we can go ahead and move on to the next one. Now we have multiplication or division from left to right. Okay, so going from left to right, you have 8 times 5, which is 40, minus 4, well, 4 divided by 2, really, so we kind of skip that. Minus 4, there we go, minus 4 divided by 2. So 8 times 5 is 40, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. So we end up with 40 minus 2. And then we can go ahead and solve it there, but I'll go ahead and do the adding and subtracting step from left to right. So 40 minus 2 is 38. All right. So if you are still writing, feel free to press pause. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next example. So you're going to notice these are going to get a little more complicated as we move on. But our process is not going to change. As long as your process stays the same, you'll get the right answer. Okay. So what if we wanted to simplify 9 plus 4 times 2 squared? Okay. So I want you to pause it and try this one on your own. Alright, so assuming you've paused it and solved it, so I'm just going to go ahead and rewrite it. 9 plus 4 times 2 squared. Now, if you wanted to, you can go ahead and look at this as your parentheses, but really this is just multiplication. So the parentheses around this serve as multiplication. So that's the difference here. When it's just being treated as multiplication, you don't treat it as a grouping symbol, because this can easily be rewritten as 9 plus 4 times 2 squared. Okay, but they just use the parentheses to make sure you know that this squared applies to this too. So that's why the parentheses is used here. Okay, so we actually have no grouping symbol parentheses. We have multiplication parentheses, but no grouping symbol parentheses. So we're going to go ahead and ignore that one. We have an exponent, which is our 2 squared. So your 2 squared, we know that 2 squared is just 2 times 2, which is 4. So that makes this 9 plus 4 times 4, since our 2 squared is 4. Okay, now we do our multiplication or division from left to right. Okay, going from left to right, that's just 9 plus, you have 4 times 4, which is 16. And again, you can go ahead and add it here if you want to, but I'm just going to go ahead and do that last. Adding to or subtracting from left to right. 9 plus 16 is 25. Again, this last step for this one wasn't necessary, but I go through each individual step just to show you that if you do that, you'll get a little extra practice in with each problem. Okay, so that's why I do that. Okay, so if you're still writing, feel free to press pause and finish up, but we're going to go ahead and move on to the next one. Okay, so you want to simplify 18 plus the difference of 10 minus 8 to the third power. Okay, so go ahead and press pause and try to solve this one on your own. All right, so I'm assuming you finished it, so let's go ahead and verify. Just going to rewrite it. 18 plus 10 minus 8 to the third power. Now on this one, we do have a parentheses that's a grouping symbol. And in that grouping symbol is the 10 minus 8. So for your parentheses, inside that parentheses is 10 minus 8, which is equal to 2. Okay. Now, as we go further along, inside the parentheses is going to get a little more complicated, but starting off with just 10 minus 8, which is 2. So this becomes 18 plus 10 minus 8, which is 2, to the third power. Okay. So our exponent, we actually do have an exponent. That's our 2 to the third power. And we know that 2 to the third power is just 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. So here you have 18 plus 2 to the third power, which is 8. Now we don't have any multiplication or division from left to right, so we can go ahead and skip that. And again, you could have solved it right here, but you have your addition or subtraction from left to right for 18 plus 8, which is 26. And again, if you solve it right here, that would have been just fine. I just go through the steps. Okay, all the way to the end. All right, so if you are still writing, feel free to pause it and finish up. But we're going to go ahead and move on to our next example. This one right here. Okay, so what if we wanted to simplify 12 divided by 3 times 3, and all of that raised to the second power? Okay, so what I want you to do is, once again, go ahead and pause it and try it on your own. All right, so we're going to go ahead and assume you finished it. So let's verify. Again, I'm just going to rewrite it. 12 divided by 3 times 3 to the second power. And we're going to start with our parentheses. Okay, so your parentheses, again, is everything in here. So you always bring your parentheses over to the side. So your parentheses is 12 divided by 3 times 2. So let me kind of clear that. Now, inside your parentheses, once again, you follow PEMDAS again. Okay, so inside the parentheses, you don't have any additional parentheses. You don't have any exponents. But you have multiplication and division from left to right. So going from left to right, you have 12 divided by 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. Times 2. Oh, sorry about that, times 3. I don't know why I wrote that 2 there. Okay, and again, if you go from left to right again, you have 4 times 3, which is 12. And you don't have any addition or subtraction, so you can go ahead and skip that. So this gives you 12 divided by 3, which is 4, times 3, which is 12. So that becomes 12 to the second power. So now we look at our exponent. 12 to the second power is 144. 12 times 12, which is 144. And actually, we don't have any multiplication or division left, or addition or subtraction left, so we can skip those two. Okay, so your answer here is 144. All right. So if you are still writing, feel free to press pause and finish up. But we're going to go ahead and jump to our next example. Okay, so what if we wanted to simplify 14, let me clear that up, times 3 divided by 7 minus 6. Okay, so once again, I want you to pause and try this one on your own. All right, so I'm assuming you've paused it. Let's go ahead and finish this one. You have 14 times 3 divided by 7 minus 6. So once again, no parentheses, so we can skip that one. We don't have any exponents, so we can skip that one. Now we go our multiplication and division from left to right. That's important. You have 14 times 3. I'll write that. 3 divided by 7 minus 6. Okay, so 14 times 3 is 42. So it becomes 42 divided by 7 minus 6. Okay. Now if we keep going left to right, we have another division, multiplication or division. So 42 divided by 7 is 6. So it goes from there to here. So you have 6 minus 6, which is 0. And actually, we can skip our adding and subtracting because that is our final answer. All right. So if you are still writing, of course, feel free to press pause. But we're going to go ahead and move on to the next one, which gets a little more complicated. This is when you know whether or not you have the process down. Okay. So what if you wanted to simplify 5 to the third power plus 2 times the entire thing in parentheses, negative 8 minus 3 times 2. Okay, so go ahead and press pause and try to do this one on your own. All right, so I'm assuming you've pressed pause, so let's go ahead and verify. Okay, so 5 to the third plus 2 times negative 8 minus 3 times 2. So we're going to start off with your parentheses or grouping symbol. So everything in here is where we're going to start. So for your parentheses, you have negative 8 minus 3 times 2. Okay, so once again, we're going to go through our whole order of operations. You have no parentheses inside of there. You have no exponents inside of there. Multiplication and division from left to right. Going from left to right, you only have one division. And that's 3 times 2. So you end up with negative 8 minus your 3 times 2, which is 6. Then you do your addition or subtraction from left to right if you want to write that down, but you don't have to. Negative 8 minus 6 is negative 14. Okay, so this, once we get done with whatever's in the parentheses, becomes 5 to the third power plus 2, and all of that is negative 14. All right, so now we go to our exponent. We only have one exponent here, and that's 5 to the third power. So 5 to the third power is 5 times 5 times 5, which is 125. So this becomes 125 plus 2 times negative 14. Okay, we do our multiplication and division, again from left to right. So that leaves us with only one multiplication or division part of that problem. So it's 125. So you have 14 times, well, 2 times negative 14, which is negative 28. 2 times negative 14 equals negative 28. So you can have it plus negative 28, or you can write it as 125 minus 28. Just depends on which one you're comfortable with. Okay, now we can actually solve it from here if you want to, since that's our adding and subtracting. 125 minus 28 is 97. Okay, so that's our final answer. All right, so if you are still writing, feel free to press pause and finish up. But we're going to go ahead and move on to our next example. All right, so what if we wanted to simplify 36 divided by 2 minus 81 minus 3 squared in parentheses. Okay, so once again, go ahead and press pause and try to solve this one on your own. All right, assuming you're all done, I'm just going to rewrite it. Divided by 2 minus 81 minus 3 squared. And we're going to start off with our parentheses slash grouping symbols. Okay, so the only thing in parentheses is this part right here. So we're going to solve that. 81 minus 3 squared. Using our own order of operations. So here, of course, you don't have to write this down. It's pretty basic for this one. So no parentheses. You have exponent, which is 3 squared. So you have 81 minus 3 squared. Remember, 3 times 3 is 9, which is 72. Again, you have your multiplication and division. You can skip, and you just do your adding and subtracting here, which is just fine. So everything in that parentheses comes out to 72. So you have 36 divided by 2, excuse me, minus 72. All right, now you don't need the parentheses there if you don't want to put it there, but I just have it there. Okay, so we don't have any exponents. We've already taken care of this exponent over here. So you can skip the exponent. You have the multiplication or division from left to right. Okay, so going from left to right, I'm just going to rewrite it. 36 divided by 2 minus 72. 36 divided by 2 is equal to 18. So 36 divided by 2 is equal to 18. Okay, so this now becomes 18 minus 72. So we do our adding and subtracting from left to right. You don't have to write that down if you don't want to. So 18 minus 72 is equal to negative 54, which is our final answer. All right. So if you are still writing, of course, feel free to press pause. But we're going to go ahead and jump to our next example. Hopefully you're starting to see the pattern. Okay. And as you can see, once again, they're slowly getting more difficult. All right, so I want you to simplify negative 4 times 2 plus 3 times 4 minus 8 squared minus 2. All right, so really what I want you to do, once again, I want you to press pause and try this one. Try the ones that get a little complicated. All right, so I'm assuming you've pressed pause and solved this one. So let's go ahead and verify. Okay. So remember, your parenthesis means any grouping symbol. And in this case, it also means the bracket. So negative 4 times 2 plus 3 times 4 minus 8 squared minus 2. Just go ahead and rewrite that. Okay, so everything in here is our grouping. So again, I always kind of solve that on the side. Okay, so you have 2 plus 3 times 4 minus 8 squared inside that bracket. Okay, so we do our own order of operations for that. You have your parentheses, which is this right here, 4 minus 8 squared. So we know that 4 minus 8 squared is 4 minus 64, which is negative 60. Because 8 squared is 8 times 8, which is 64. 4 minus 64 is negative 60. So that gives you 2 plus 3 times negative 60. Okay, so we don't have any exponents. We can skip that. Multiplication and division from left to right. Going left to right, we only have 3 times negative 60. So 3 times negative 60 is negative 180. That leaves you with 2 plus negative 180, or 2 minus 180, however you want to write it. And we do our adding and subtracting from left to right. 2 plus negative 180 is negative 178. Okay, so everything in here simplifies to negative 4 times negative 178 minus 2. Okay, so going from here, we notice we don't have any exponents, so we can skip that part. You have your multiplication and division from left to right. So going from left to right, negative 4 times negative 178 is positive 712. Minus 2. Okay, let me kind of, there we go. Okay, and then we do our adding and subtracting again from left to right. 712 minus 2 is 710. All right. So if you are still writing this one, feel free to press pause. But we're going to go ahead and move on to the next one. I told you we had lots of examples here because I want to make sure you got it. Okay, so only 2 more, so hang in there. You're almost done. Okay, so what if we wanted to evaluate 10 times 9 minus 15, the absolute value of 9 minus 15, minus 2 to the 5th power? Okay, so once again, press pause and try this one on your own. All right, assuming you're all done, so let's go ahead and verify. Okay, just going to rewrite it. 10, I'll make my one like that so it won't confuse the absolute value. 9 minus 15 minus 2 to the 5th. Okay, so we start with our parentheses or grouping symbols. So the only thing inside of a grouping symbol is our 9 minus 15. Okay, so 9 minus 15 is equal to negative 6. So this becomes 10 times the absolute value of 9 minus 15, which is negative 6, minus 2 to the 5th power. All right, so now we go ahead and move on to our exponent. This is the only exponent here. So we have 2 to the 5th power, which is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which is 32. Okay, so we have 10 times the absolute value of negative 6. Well, actually, I should have gone ahead and do that one. So before we do that, we'll leave that over there on the right. I'll go ahead and finish this up first. Okay, because this actually becomes 10. The absolute value of negative 6 is positive 6. And we could have done that later, but I want to stay on track. The absolute value of negative 6 is positive 6 minus 2 to the 5th. There we go. So now we go to the exponent, which is 2 to the 5th power, which is 32. So we have 10 times positive 6 minus 2 to the 5th power, which is 32. Okay. So now we do our multiplication or division, again from left to right. So starting here, so that's 10 times 6, which is 60. So you have 60 minus 32. And now we do our adding and subtracting. So 60 minus 32 is equal to 28. All right, so once again, you could have gone right to here and solved the absolute value in the next step, but I like to keep things in a certain order just to avoid any confusion. All right, so if you are still writing this down, feel free to press pause, but we're going to go ahead and move on to our last example. Okay, so what if you wanted to evaluate the quotient negative 3 times 3 plus 2 plus 5 divided by 17 minus 3 times negative 4. Okay. So once again, I want you to go ahead and press pause and try to solve this one. All right, so I'm assuming you've already paused it and solved it, so let's go ahead and verify. So if you have negative 3 times 3 plus 2 plus 5 divided by 17 minus 3 times negative 4, what we're going to do here is we're going to rewrite it. Because remember, that's just saying you have this whole numerator divided by this entire denominator. So what you have is, you have negative 3 times 3 plus 2 plus 5 divided by 17 minus 3 times negative 4. Okay. So now we use our order of operations. Okay. So once again, we have groupings for both of those. So we have to use PEMDAS for both of those. So what I'm going to do is just kind of separate those two. So you have negative 3 times 3 plus 2 plus 5. And you have 17 minus 3 times negative 4. So you're going to use the order of operation for this one. And you're going to use the order of operation for that one. Okay, so here, first thing you do is solve any parentheses in here, which is 3 plus 2. So this becomes negative 3 times 3 plus 2, which is 5, plus 5. Okay, so you have any exponent, so you can cross that out. You have your multiplication or division, again from left to right, which is right here. So you have negative 3 times 5, which is negative 15, plus 5. Then you have your adding and subtracting. Negative 15 plus 5 is negative 10. Okay, so now we do it on this side. We don't have any parentheses because remember, these are just for multiplication. It's not a grouping symbol. So we don't have any parentheses here. We don't have any exponents here. We have multiplication and division from left to right. 3 times negative 4. 3 times negative 4, negative 12. So we have 17 minus negative 12, or you can rewrite that as 17 plus. The opposite of negative 12 is positive 12. Then you have addition and subtraction, again from left to right. You didn't really have to write it. You could have solved it here, as you know by now. So 17 plus 12 is 29. Okay. So, for our rewrite, our grouping symbols, remember this is negative 3 times 3 plus 2 plus 5 divided by 17 minus 3 times negative 4. Kind of move this down a little bit. There we go. So for our grouping symbols, we did those already. Negative 3 times 3 plus 2 plus 5. Realize that was negative 10. So negative 10 divided by, and we know that our 17 minus 3 times negative 4, we know that's 29. So really that just becomes negative 10 divided by 29. And we can do the exponents, but we know we don't have any. And the multiplication and division, you can't really simplify this unless you plug it into a calculator, and then most times they want the exact answer, not the decimal approximation. So negative 10 divided by 29 just becomes negative 10 divided by 29. And you don't have any addition or subtraction, so you can skip that. Okay, so that would be your exact answer. All right. So I know it was quite a few examples, but I wanted to make sure you understood it. So hopefully this made sense, and I will see you on the next video.